All right, now we're going to be looking at modeling with the idea of texturing, okay, rather than just modeling. So a beginning student just models. They just model anything, and they're really good at modeling. And when it comes down to doing the UVs and texture phase, they kind of phase out. So the reason that is because the UV process just becomes so hard that they don't have the self-confidence, they don't have the practice. So if you could just think about modeling with the idea of texturing, that way when you get to the texturing phase, it's not such a nightmare. So we're going to look at a couple things that come up all the time. One's kind of like a thing called backface culling. So let's look at a box for an example here. I like minimizing these smaller examples. So I'm going to take all the faces of this box and I'm going to go in here and take off keep faces together. Okay, then I'm going to extrude it and I'm going to change its Y value and I'm going to change its X value. So I'm just clicking on the little box there. And then I'm going to extrude it one more time and I'm going to change its Z value. And I'm going to get to about right here. Okay. So what's wrong with this? Well, if you look here in the corner, it looks kind of odd. And I have backface culling on. If I turn backface culling off, this is what it looks like. A potential student at the very beginning might not see this problem ahead of time. So they'll just keep modeling. Me, I see it and I say, ooh, that's going to be a problem when I go to texture it. That's the difference right there, is seeing problems ahead of time as you model. That way texturing doesn't become a nightmare. So right there, way to see that is keep backface culling on. And if you see weird things occur like that, stop. This is backface culling, and you can definitely see it if you go like this. Okay, so don't do that. Let's look at an unfolding issue when it comes down to this. Window, UV texture editor. Okay, so you can clearly see that this box is what we want, and this one needs to be a representation of this box, right? So I'm not seeing this face anywhere here, and I'm not seeing, let's say, this face. So that face is definitely not a face here. It's a face here, but not here. Now, if I grab all the UVs in my front view of just the changes that I made and hit unfold, I get this. This is a better representation of that box. Now, had I done it this way, which is a very early stage doing it type of thing, if I grab all the UVs and unfold it, oh, come on, I know it's going to do it the bad way. Let's see. Go to Object, grab all the UVs. There we go. So this, when you see this, it's not because Maya is failing. It is because you are failing to understand Maya. So you have to be very conscientious about what you highlight when you unfold. In this case, I want to only grab the UVs that I've changed. And this is a very small, easy example, but trust me when I say that sometimes that's not all that easy to do. All right, so there we go. And then let's get into the side view. Let's go into the top view. Perfect. Now I have a good representation of the UVs on this object. Now, in the last unit, we used this basic UV coordinate map to see, like how the UVs are laying out. And we apply that to the object. What you're going to see is things like this occur. Now, there is no real good fix for it, unfortunately. What's happening here is you're getting kind of a squashed effect that happens on the UVs. They're stretched in some manner. So the only real good way to fix it, but you're going to be at the risk of causing a lot of seams to occur, is this. I'll just do it on one part here. I'll grab all the edges going around this, and you can see that it's this one right here, so we'll address that one first. Cut it. Let's go to UV, highlight a single UV, control right click to shell, W on the keyboard, and click it off. Alright, so what happens if we do this? Let's go to edge, take all these edges and cut it. Then take the UVs and unfold it. Alright, that looks a lot better. So now I don't have any of these weird things like this occurring. Now that might be something small. You might not even see it within a CG environment. But I know it's there, and I want to address it right off the bat. So, that's the difference between kind of thinking about is another person that's doing kind of designing, looking at your work in a CG environment and seeing these flaws. So this only occurs on places that have very extruded surfaces. Alright, so let's cut all these at the same time. Save some time here. So I'm holding shift here. Cut all those. Now this is a lot of work. I'm wasting a lot of time here on a potential item that would be easier to fix had I modeled it correctly. And I'm going to keep continuing to do this and show you the difference between doing it all this way versus a different way. Oops. So there's my object. You can see there's one here that didn't obey. had I didn't cut it. Now you see I have a layout issue. So again, I'm taking a lot of time here, and is it worth it? There we go. All right, now let's look at a different way to do this. My intention was to make a crate. So, like this would be the first starting point of a crate. And then I could wood texturize the top part and, like just have this recess in here. So I would have to hand paint some textures in here and yada, yada, yada. Well, a crate, if you kind of think about it, has a lid and all the sides are kind of nailed together. So what would be easier maybe is to think about this. Now I have this. I only have one recess value to kind of worry about. Where's that at? I have no idea. Oh, right here. Okay, so jump into the top view. But I need the rest of it to maintain the shape. So in other words, this is not a cube. This is kind of like just a flat surface. So let's see about doing this. Yeah, it's better. I'm going to see if I can get it to change without it though. Try to, there we go. See how I didn't grab all the UVs? Perfect. So this is a good representation of this shape. Nice and straight. It didn't have any problems. Let's go in and put in that other part, shall we? So Crate has this going on. This is where world properties and local properties meet. So let's say I wanted to scale this correlating to world properties or local properties. So I got local, normal, and I have object. Okay, so object allows me to do this. Okay. Perfect. Now, what would have a new student have done? They would have done this. They would have tried to insert an edge loop here, and then they would have tried to raise this up and to make this board. Okay, don't do that. That's something they taught you in modeling class, and they didn't think about texturing down the road. Here, this object is much easier to texture. Okay, let's do the UVs on that one simple object. See, I have a potential problem here. So I have to unfold this object, right? So I look at the same properties I did in the last unit where I unfolded a box. It's the same thing. It's just not perfectly cubed. Did cut that right? Yep. Okay, so let's do it the other way. It's a simple object and do some automatic mapping. Oh, that's a lot easier, right? Done. All right, now let's put the material on it. So the material of this and the material of that. Wow, that's a size difference, right? And there's another thing we have to worry about. We have to get these the same UV space. So for this one, I will make it bigger at first, just to get it on the 0 to 1. This one, I will match up the size of the squares. And you can see that's kind of hard to think about because the squares are so big. So this is where you think about workflow. What would be easier is if you take the texture, go like this, go to place 2D texture, and then change this to a higher UV coverage. So repeat, maybe 4. Okay, now let's look at them. Well, it's much easier to see the size. This scale thing is so sensitive in Maya. So you're going to see me screw up a lot when I go to scale things. There we go. So those numbers are now the same size. The texture space is all the same. And I have a lid. And when I combine these two objects now, they are joined in the UV area too. But they're the same size. So now I can use layout. When I do layout, look at that. I kept the size, it laid it out for me, and I can now scale this just a little bit because I like to keep it a little further away from the edge, kind of like that. So don't let it touch the edge, keep it away from the edge. So think about parametrics. You can think about like taking objects apart, how they really are. Think about this versus this. Now what I can do is if I'm building a 3D model, I can take this one lid and duplicate it enough times to form a box. And then it would have that little crack in it to make sure it really looks like a 3D object. So let's continue on with the next video with this concept and see what the pipeline looks like.